One last way that people attempted to connect themselves to the suffering of Jesus, their fears of death, their concern over sin, was through joining an order known as the Flagellants. That's flagellants. These were ascetic individuals who moved from town to town whipping themselves. It has been a monastic practice, but became popular with the common people in the 14th century. Of course, you were expected to be strictly committed to the order, have absolute obedience to the order, and whip yourself. When you joined, you had a 33-and-a-half-day initiation for the 33-and-a-half years Jesus supposedly lived. And you notice that how long was his ministry? Was it 3 years? Was it 3.5 years? Well, the traditional 33.5. During that time, you would be involved in prayers and hymns, and beating yourself until bloody, and preaching. There would be 2 flagellations every day in public. You would whip yourself twice a day in public and once in private. Later, the practice was suppressed because people began talking about experiencing the forgiveness of sins through whipping themselves, which was outside of the church's control. And so the church really tried to stop that going on. It was still practiced. In fact, it was even practiced as missionaries came over to the United States. There is a group called the Penitente Brotherhood in the Southwest that continued it up through, I think, even in the 19th century. I don't think they're still practicing it, but it might still be around in a very, very small group.
I don't know, something comes to mind from like a movie I saw, maybe.
Da Vinci Code.
Yeah.
Da Vinci Code, yeah. That's with Opus Dei, which is another organization, but it's a similar type of practice. Right? You know, that idea of using physical punishment to discipline yourself spiritually. Yeah, I think that's a completely different thing. They were also beating themselves in the head with wood. It wasn't all about whipping and thinking about Jesus' death and worrying about dancing skeletons. There were other ways people expressed their piety in the Middle Ages as well. Some of these were practices encouraged by the church. Some of these were practices that individuals just started on their own, or a group might have started. Some of these practices may found approval with the church, others may not. The couple that we'll talk about here are practices that did develop outside of church control, but were later approved of by the church. One is the use of the rosary, and we've talked about rosaries before. The rosary is a string of beads as a means to focus for prayer. Now, the use of beads in meditation or prayer had been used in Eastern religions like Buddhism, and even appears in Islam, but then also eventually becomes part of Christianity as well. It appears like, again, this is one of those things where we're just historians are just kind of able to tell some things, but there's a lot of the origins that are just unknown. And so it appears that it became popular in Eastern monasticism first, the Orthodox monasticism, and then moved its way into Western monasticism, right? So the monks in the West picked it up, and then kind of stayed in the monks in the East, but eventually made its way to the common people in the West. And as I mentioned, of course, the string of beads is used to focus in prayer, in what types of prayer to say, how to say certain prayers. There are differences between Orthodox and Catholic over how many beads. In Catholic rosaries, there are different sized beads, so that's a difference. There's a difference about other things as well. There are even differences between Greek Orthodox Christians and Russian Orthodox Christians over these kind of issues. The tradition in the West was that a Marian apparition, right? Mary appears in the Middle Ages to St. Dominic and encouraged the use of the rosary in a certain way. But again, elements of this are older than Dominic and weren't entirely Catholic, but that's the tradition that develops. In the Catholic form of the rosary, there are 15 sections of 10 beads separated by larger beads. In the Greek form, there are 100 beads, all the same size. For the Russian Orthodox, there are 103 beads of different sizes and separations. In the Catholic Rite, on the smaller beads, you say the Ave Maria, or the Hail Mary prayer, which is, again, different. It's not Immaculate Reception. And the Ave Maria, coming from Luke chapter 1, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with you, blessed are you among women, blessed is the fruit of your womb. All right, and so coming from Gabriel's announcement to Mary that she's going to have Jesus. So you say those on the smaller beads. On the larger beads, you say the Pater Noster or the Our Father, right? The so-called Lord's Prayer. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy will be done, thy kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. Another popular devotion occurring a little bit later than this time, we're kind of pushing into the Reformation period a little bit, is devotion to the Virgin of Guadalupe. In New Spain, right, so the Spanish had come over into Mexico, Central America, a tale was developed of a Marian apparition that became a very popular image and devotion. So in December of 1531, Mary supposedly appears to Juan Diego, who is a new convert he's a Native American, and so he's converted to Catholicism, and then is given the baptismal name Juan Diego or John James. So that's his Catholic name. So Mary appears to him and tells him to tell the bishop of the area that he should build a shrine to Mary right here, right where she is up here. And so Diego goes to the priest, but the priest isn't entirely sure of whether this is an authentic vision or not. And so he says to Diego, next time you see her, ask for a sign that will demonstrate that this is authentic. So Diego returns home. And he has to care for his sick uncle, and so he's unable to return to the area to encounter Mary. Well, the next day, he decides his uncle's gotten so bad, he needs to find a priest because the native medications have failed. But he knows if he goes the route he's gone, he's going to encounter Mary again, and she's going to wonder why he hasn't done anything. And so he tries to go this out-of-the-way route, right, to get to the priest. Well, Mary finds him anyway. And so she tells him that she has healed his uncle, and he asks her for the sign that the priest had asked for. She tells him to go into some nearby rocks and gather roses there. Despite the fact that it's winter, right, it's December, there should be no roses. And so Juan Diego goes into the rocks, finds these roses, puts them in his cloak, ties them up, or takes them to Mary. Mary rearranges them a little, kind of puts them just so in the cloak, and says, take them to the bishop. All right? Goes to the bishop, claims that he is bearing the sign. The sign he thinks is roses in winter. And so he opens the cloak, the roses fall out, the bishop kneels down before him. Because on the cloak has appeared a sign of Mary, exactly as Juan Diego had described her. And so I'm sure you've probably seen this image. It's all over the place. It appears in all sorts of ways of Mary, that kind of wreathed, in that blue cloak, looking very native, indigenous. Close-up depiction. All right, and so supposedly this appears on this cloak. Juan Diego would be canonized as a saint in the year 2002. Now, you probably question whether there's some historicity to this event. Right? But people have not only questioned the historicity of the event, people have even questioned whether Juan Diego existed at all. All right? And so, when he was canonized as a saint, there's a lot of controversy over that as to whether he was a real person. So somehow this image was created, right? My personal feeling is that it wasn't Mary appearing to him and creating roses, but the image appeared, but there's a lot we still don't know about it. But the image has become so popular, especially among Latino Catholics, that it shows up in all sorts of ways, right? People getting tattoos of the Virgin of Guadalupe. I've even seen night lights, like a Virgin of Guadalupe night light, right? And so it projects through the well. So it becomes a very popular image and a very popular devotion, but developing in this kind of time period. On Tuesday, we'll pick up with the Reformation. We'll say a couple last things about artwork during this time period, but we'll move on.